Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of The Contrarian. We're delighted to have back Lynn Sweet from Chicago. Welcome, Lynn.
Good to be here again. Welcome from the snowy part of the world right now here.
Exactly. The snow, as you can see from your window,
Let me just
has
show everybody
has
what it's
already
like.
arrived. So there you
Snow
are.
is here. We had a record November snowfall in the last 2 days.
Wow.
See, this is like having two cameras here, two shot. Uh,
Exactly.
and we get more snow, but it's also cold. So I grew up here. I dress in layers. I could do it. I don't like it. I
But
think living in Washington since the end of 1993 maybe made me a bit soft because I could complain
yes,
now about the weather in a way I never used to. But you know what? You wear a nice sweater and
exactly. You're
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Well, I do remember when Barack Obama came to DC in the first winter, and he was appalled at what wimps we are, and that with just a hint of snow, all the
Everything
schools
closed.
closed.
Yeah.
And he got some grief for that, but he was right. We are snow wimps in Washington,
Yeah.
DC. But be that as it may, on we go. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some kind of leftover news from the invasion of the federal forces, and in particular, the head of the Midway Blitz operation, who was Gregory Bovino. There were all sorts of issues involving him, including some arrests. And you folks at the Chicago Sun-Times had a great story on one woman who was arrested. Why don't you tell us about that? If you have the headline handy, you can show it to us. And there it is. His
Fine.
word means nothing. Dismissed case reveals dishonesty of Border Patrol commander, protester says. So tell us about that story. Who was she?
And this is by
And
my colleague Chip Mitchell with our uh, WBEZ partnership, Chicago Public Media. Our owner we're part of Chicago Public Media owns WBEZ and the Sun Times, and we have been cooperating. We are partners. We work with each other. So here is a story where, thank God for iPhones and videotape, where this Cole Sheridan, who's a hospitality worker, was arrested, sent into this now infamous Broadview Detention Center, went to the Metropolitan Correctional Center, which is the federal jail downtown Chicago, and uh, charged with attacking a federal officer. But as time went by, video surfaced that showed she didn't do what she was said. And let me just read you. Chip did such a good job on this story. And by the way, this isn't the only protester who it turned out didn't had video evidence that what was alleged didn't happen. So uh, the protest was calm until a convoy of federal vehicles paraded through, this Cole Sheridan said. Drones buzzed overhead, government photographers scurried into place. A tank like armored vehicle rumbled past, carrying, according to Cole Sheridan, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. So she ends up in some kind of a jostling because she said, she called it a stunt to show force. But however it happened, there was jostling, and she ended up on the ground under Bovino and other agents and was taken away, spending 3 days locked up. So in the criminal complaint, Bovino accused Sheridan of pushing him. An agent under Bovino's command accused Sheridan of taking a swing at him. These are very serious charges, and they held up until 4 weeks later. A friend happened to spot Sheridan getting pushed down in footage from an October 31 news account. So the video demonstrates, Sheridan said, that not only did I not have no altercation with Bovino, I wasn't even in front of him. Okay, so the prosecutor dropped the charges the next day. Now, this is one, and let me read this very compelling paragraph from Chip Mitchell's story. Sheridan's run in with Bovino is one of several occasions in which the Border Patrol boss appears to have invented facts, rearranged chronologies, or distorted what happened. A string of similar cases has been dismissed against Chicago area protesters and arrested immigrants. Wow.
Wow, that is shocking. It really is extraordinary. So, what would be the ramifications if he, in fact, lied in testimony? And frankly, there was some of his testimony that was called into question before Judge Ellis, if we
Yeah.
recall. And there are allegations that were allegedly invented. Will there be any legal recourse, do you think? Will these people either bring suit or could they be court directed inquiries about him?
Uh, so let's take it from the top. In the old days, this would have been a national scandal. This alone,
Yes.
top official invents facts, doesn't doesn't have a solid case, uh, waits until some video surfaces to disprove him, and this would be major. But there is so much incoming, and I'm sure you have talked about this on your programs and everybody. I don't have an original observation here that the normalization of all this uh,
Yes.
behavior that would have been maybe a subject of a congressional inquiry, would have had an internal inquiry, might have provoked some words from the boss about, well, we have to have better cases, look at the evidence, uh, wear body cams, see if there was a body cam at this so altercation. I mean, that's why they're used by law enforcement. This could have been cleared up. So, I think along the way there was a ruling for wearing body cams, but if there were body cams from the agents around there that we didn't know about, they sure didn't surface. Because if they were there, they would have shown that Bovino wasn't pushed by this woman. So he went on to go to Charlotte. I don't know where he is as we speak today. I think we joked last time we talked, he wants to snowbird like a lot of other people who live in a cold place. So, if there's civil suits possible, don't know. We haven't, I'm not aware of it, but you don't have any particular time constraint at the moment of doing it. And there's, so I don't know where that will go. I don't know if there's going to be any judicial reaction more than what has happened. But this does set a stage for if the agents come back in the spring, as they have,
Yes.
some reporters have said through their sources, this sets a very different stage. Also, will he continue to be the public face of the stepped up uh, enforcement operations? Why him? Why
Yes.
isn't it funny that when these people get in trouble, it's always something with him involved? So I don't know. You want to, he is the boss. He runs these operations. He's not the boss of the whole border patrol. So I don't know. Maybe there'll be a rethinking of what the mission is. And do you want it to be about Greg Bovino, or do you want it to be about getting the worst, most dangerous people here illegally out of the country? And so far, there have been other studies that have found that most of the people who were taken into detention, arranged, or arrested had no significant criminal background. So
Yes.
I don't know how or when there's going to be a reckoning. Certainly don't look to Congress on this, because it's taking Congress all it could do to pivot to another story, but not to take us off. Congress seems tied up in knots about whether to have an inquiry over the shooting of of the two people aboard the Venezuelan ship that was
Yes.
shot down. Okay, that seems to even be a question as to an inquiry. Usually these things are routine. Maybe facts will emerge that there was justification uh, for taking out the vessel, the entire vessel. Certainly finishing off people clinging to lifeboats will be a much tougher situation to explain, but explain it. So
Yes.
if there is trouble doing that, Jennifer, then I think shining the congressional spotlight on Greg Bovino is low, low, low on any priority. But
Right.
we also speak. There's another special congressional election coming up. Maybe the Michiganders will send some kind of message that is meaningful or sends a signal, depending who wins. So I answered
Absolutely.
the long way of saying the answer to your question. I don't know.
Well, I think your central point that these things get lost in the never stopping flood of misdeeds, scandal, questions is absolutely the case. And I think the administration has yet to realize that these people then become a liability if he's involved in other incidents and has to testify. Is he a credible person? Does he screw up other arrests, other operations that they have?
But then it all goes back to the Supreme Court
Yeah,
because the Trump administration appeals, 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 and it takes time for the court to get around to everything. Um, but that's the big unknown landscape you're marching into here, Jennifer, because if there are substantial rulings from the Supreme Court that uphold things that Trump has done, that uphold things that many commentators, legal scholars say, oh no, it's totally illegal. No court will hold it. If they do, then we keep getting new chapters of this unending book. So I'm
absolutely.
so far from conclusions on this, or even if you think you have some kind of signal that there's an election trend or something, I just am so skeptical of anything until we know a little bit more about what the court might do. And my God, I'm kind of pivoting, and the impact of the price jumps for people with on the Obamacare plans who will have that to sink in, within,
Exactly.
so all that, can change the climate, the political climate, the calculation of what Trump does, and then whether or not he's supported by the Supreme Court.
Well, let's make a even larger pivot as we look ahead across the political landscape. Um, in the distant future, though it won't be so distant before you know it. We, of course, have the preliminaries of the presidential race for 2028. And we've kind of seen this pattern of one governor after another, senators to a lesser extent, kind of rising to the occasion, making a name for themselves. It seems that Governor Newsom in California has gotten a huge amount of attention, not only because of his ability to kind of take on and twist the knife with Donald Trump on social media, but because of Prop 50 and because he is such a fundraising colossus. We were chatting. How do you see in these preliminary rounds J.B. Pritzker, who's the other name who comes up very frequently? How is he doing? Certainly during the Chicago invasion, he was front and center. Has he been able to sustain that? What's his strategy, you think, going forward to remain in the public eye?
Well, some thoughts. My friends at Deadline.com had a fascinating story about the Hollywood money kind of consolidating, or at least pitching in on Gavin Newsom's behalf. Now, that's natural for a for a California politician to be familiar with all the Hollywood big donors and the donor class there, but that doesn't mean you automatically, get the support. You have to earn it. So that's telling. I think one of the things that happens is that when you have to go around and cultivate big donors, and bear with me, everyone who's listening, because it's not the politics I want to have happen in our country. I'm just
Yes.
discussing with Jennifer the politics that is the reality of what happens, and that people start fundraising, not or helping others fundraise or wooing donors. So JB Pritzker is everyone knows, a billionaire. He puts his own money in his campaigns. He's already put tens of millions in his governor reelection race in 2020 and next year, 2026. And by the way, Newsom doesn't have a race. So he also can kind of roam around easier because he doesn't have to say, well, first I want to be reelected and then we'll see what happens. So I think when you have to go out and truly fundraise and woo donors, you then put yourself in kind of like the buzz business among people who look for, uh, again, signs and signals that somebody is getting, somebody within the donor class or people are getting jazzed up because you need money to run. And in federal money, if you have a real presidential campaign committee, you have caps on what donors could give you. So a billionaire, you can't do what JB does in the state race, just give your, just, uh, well, in the federal race, self-funding is something else. But let me put it this way in my mumbling here. Uh, when you don't have to woo donors on a consistent basis, maybe you lose out a little bit on the buzziness of you're here,
Yes.
you're there. Now, JB does front fundraisers for some state parties. No surprise, he's been in New Hampshire. I think he's up Florida. He's been in some places. One of the things that vexes me about Pritzker, and if any of your people are listening, I'm just saying it to be help. You could be more helpful in letting people know ahead of time where he's going and what he's doing, or informing people in real time. I know there's security issues, but the people who are at the place he's going know he's coming. So it just would be nice to have more of the bigger picture easily available. But Pritzker's instincts are really spot on. He went on an unannounced trip to the Vatican a few weeks ago and met with Pope Leo, our Chicago Pope, who,
Yes.
per our Sun Times front page, the Pope. Okay, and he and his wife MK brought a photo, not a photo, a picture that an incarcerated woman in an Illinois prison drew, and MK has tried to help and improve the situation for incarcerated women. And this art project was one of hers. And we had a big story in the paper today about how this drawing, it looked to me like a pastel, made its way to Pope Leo, of a woman kind of looking up with a butterfly in her hand. It was very aspirational. So the idea that he went, got the audience, brought him Chicago stuff, is fascinating.
Yes.
Leo,
Yes.
wildly pivot, by the way, has been very outspoken about the treatment of immigrants in the United States. But back to Pritzker, the other person to keep an eye on from Illinois, of course, is Rahm Emanuel. And Rahm, who is free from any job right now or government responsibility, has been using his time to appear in a variety of specialized platforms, podcasts, particularly,
Yes.
where he is very directly reaching shows with Democratic oriented audiences where there is a version of the same question always asked. Well, Ram, what would you do? And he ticks off as he says, first, he always talks in threes. I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do that. And okay, I don't know how you make that into a message that is necessarily different than others, because it's hard to say why something took off, like the affordability issue. Now
Right.
Trump is for it too. Affordability, who's not for it? But that word seized the imagination when it was launched in Mamdani's New York race. But who's for non-affordability? You have to be real when you talk about it.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
what Tom does is speak more to the real world of how to get things done than, it's nice to say Raja Krishnamurti, who is running for the Senate when a three front
Yes.
runner the Durban seat, he wants to give free school lunches for everybody. Well, I don't know. Does that mean people at Sidwell? I mean, what's the means test? What is the Sidwell, a big private school in Washington, but who doesn't like free? But then there's always details. And here's where I learned that lesson back when Bernie Sanders was running for president and he caught the imagination of the youth vote. And again, the oldest candidate had the most young followers. And my analysis was a lot of it was because he talked about not only school affordability, but forgiving student loans. So I'd go out and interview students or recent graduates. And why are you for Bernie? He's going to forgive student loans. I said, okay, do you know any of the details? No. Where'd you go? And they would name a private school. Now, if you went to DePaul, Northwestern, Georgetown, Harvard, this is not what Bernie Sanders' program was about. It was about going to a public school.
Yes.
I could just see the deflation. But you really think, I mean, this is where if you and I could ever unite in another cause, civic and financial literacy is so important. And just like read the print, do you really think that someone is going to come and wipe out your whatever 50,000 a year tuition? Really? I thought that. Okay, but people did. So
Yes.
everyone now, if the Democrats just go start talking about free this and free that, free rent, it just is easy to say, so hard to do, which is why New York now has to produce. Uh,
Yes. And that is the gap. That is the challenge on running and creating high expectations, and then you have to govern. And can you meet those expectations? I think you point to exactly the right issue for all of these people in 2028, and that is there are not going to be huge policy differences. So how do they differentiate themselves? How do you say, not him, not her, but me? And it's going to be very interesting. Is it a tonal? Is it a personality driven campaign? Is it a who can best sock it to the Republicans campaign? A lot of qualified people are going to be running. They're going to be governors, there'll be senators. It's going to be a large field, I think we can agree. So coming up with a way to distinguish yourself, I think is going to be fascinating to see.
Wild card. Let me ask you a question, ma'am.
Yes.
Uh, are you ruling out a third run by Trump as you talk about and calculate 2028?
I think I am for two reasons. One is if you look at him physically, let's face it, he's not doing all that well, and he may deny it and he may rail about it. But if you look at him, he doesn't look that great. And if you can think out 3, 4 years from now, I just don't think physically he's going to be up to it. And the other is no one in the Republican Party will want him to run because they all want to run. So I think there will be tremendous pressure from donors, from other Republicans to make it clear he is not, and therefore opening up the way. I do think it's also highly improbable given the amendment problem that he has and the 22nd Amendment problem. But I think he loves to remain in the limelight. And that may create a problem for Republicans insofar as delay and uncertainty kind of freezes money, and people are afraid to cross him by announcing too soon. So it will be interesting to see on his side. And as we all know, as soon as the midterm polls close, a nanosecond afterwards will begin the 2028 race. And I would add to the Pritzker issue, what we're going to see is a lot of these people getting chits as they go out and campaign for other people in 2026. Can they raise money there? Can they drag people across the finish line in those races? And then we'll be able to see how they kind of test run their own messages. They test run their own appeal. So it's going to be very interesting. We're going to see a lot of these people next year, not necessarily running for themselves,
Right,
but
which
running for.
is why Pritzker is so viable. because as you know, so he might not get the buzz business, but he could be everywhere. He can
Yes,
do what he wants. He can execute his plans, and he doesn't have to spend the enormous amount of time candidates take to move donors.
exactly. Exactly. All right. So let's, for our last topic of the day, switch to your Senate race. You have some major candidates, and there's not necessarily a front runner. Give us a little bit of the lay of the land, who's running, and kind of what's the strength and the weakness of each one of them.
Well, the three front runners are Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, who is running, no surprise, with Governor Pritzker's support. We don't know how that will manifest financially. Again, because of federal caps, he can't just pour money into her campaign, but somewhere, somehow, uh, his help might manifest. Then there are two members of Congress from the Chicago area, Congressman Raja Krishnamurti and Congresswoman Robin Kelly. Both have long records in the House. What distinguishes them if we were to go look at votes in the House and say, would you vote this way, that way? On most things, they would agree. Now, if we get to the issue of the votes dealing with Israel, Gaza, there will be, we have to go through them, and I want to be careful here. We might see some distinctions, but that might be moot by the time of the March 2026 Illinois primary. And I'm glad you brought this up because Illinois has one of the earliest primaries of.
Yes, it's March, really. I mean, it's 4 months away at most.
And so, there is a poll out, and when polls like this surface so early, it's because the front runner likes the results. So Raja Krishnamurti and Robin are the top two, with Raja the first one, and then Juliana Stratton the third of the major candidates. But there's a lot of undecideds. What is interesting here is that Raja is an incredible fundraiser, and has an overwhelming amount of cash on hand, and he's been running commercials. And I, I've been seeing a lot of them, and I know it gets his name out there, but I don't know where it where and what it's supposed to do besides setting the stage. He talks about one commercial, he's fighting against Trump, and he has a 5-point plan against Trump. Okay, you win the House, you win the Senate, you want to pass some legislation to prevent Trump from doing some of the things he did. That's it. To me, it's interesting, but more aspirational and more just, no, I don't know what it really shows you would deliver or be able to deliver for the people of Illinois. So, in some ways, where I think all three have been letting me down in my analysis, is that neither of the three has found a uniquely Illinois cause to be for. Uh, I could think of a few, but it doesn't matter what I think, but there are Illinois issues. And the big national issues, there's not that much difference. You
Right.
talk about reinstalling the Obamacare credits or making sure SNAP, the, used to be known as food stamps, that the rules don't change or maybe open it up to more people. You could be more welcoming to immigrants, but those are all very important issues to Illinois. But there are many people in Congress right now who care about those very issues. And one of the remarkable things about Dick Durbin is his ability to see issues before anyone else did. And forgive me if we've talked about this before, but he is the man who invented the Dreamer movement, because one day a woman came to him who attended a local university, who discovered when she went to apply for something that she wasn't a citizen. She lived here since she was a kid. Is she was here illegally through no choice of her own. And Durbin looked into it, and out of that, he understood she is not an exception. And the Dreamer movement got its name from an acronym of his one of his first signature pieces of legislation to deal with this problem. By the way, decades later, still hasn't been fixed. But no smoking on airlines, credit card scams, for-profit colleges, of which there are many in Illinois. So even if you have a national issue, if it's not uniquely Illinois, show me some originality here. Because
Yes, absolutely.
figure it out. How do I know it? Because Durbin did it time and time again.
Yeah. And we, I think, forget that history because in his latest iteration, he has perhaps gotten a lot of flack for not being out there on the cutting edge. And that was certainly not how his career started. But I think this is what time will do to one in the Senate and the years gone by. Well, we are going to continue to follow that Senate race. It is going to be fascinating. And as you say, it's all going to be decided in the next few months because the Democratic nominee, for all intents and purposes, will be the next senator from Illinois. And so we're going to have the first major Senate race, if you will, in the next few months. So we will be looking forward to that. So thank you, Lynn. Stay warm in the Chicago fall and winter, and we will look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Ken.